This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Starting today's show is K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth as he explains why he has been receiving more questions about fleas. He also describes their life cycle. LaVell, Winsor, and Reid keep the show rolling as they highlight the goals and agenda for this year's Women Grow the Farm Conference. K-State instructor and Extension horticulture specialist Cynthia Domenghini ends the show discussing how to start seeds. She covers the seeds to use, starting mix, containers, water, and the light needed to successfully grow seedlings. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our show talking about fleas with K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Jeff, why are we talking about fleas today?
Well, mainly because they're a serious pest, in case you haven't ever noticed. And if you haven't ever noticed, you've been lucky in your lifetime. But in the last month, I have gotten many calls about fleas. The number one question they ask is, how come there seem to be more fleas this year, this time of year, than in past years? And I can't answer that question. But I thought we'd go through the biology of fleas a little bit, because most folks don't understand the biology. And then maybe you could trace it back in your area to why seem to be more fleas right now. So, I've been getting questions about, what about this nice, mild winter we've been having? How's that going to affect insects? First of all, that's really not going to affect insects that much. If we have a really cold winter, it may take a few off the top and they kill 10% or something. But if the insects have adapted to Kansas weather, they've done it over many years. And a warm spell now or a cold spell later on is not going to do much until they've actually broken dormancy, like the wheat or the alfalfa. Once those break dormancy, if you get a real cold spell, that can affect it, but otherwise it's not. Most of our insects, pests, are in a period of dormancy right now. So whether it's really warm, really cold, they may become active for a little bit, but it's not going to really affect them. So that's number one. Number two, fleas. The life cycle of the flea is I don't think it's very well understood by a lot of folks. First of all, if you're going to successfully treat fleas, in my opinion, you need an integrated management scheme to attack, because the immature flea is a larva. It's a little white, maggot-like, yellowish, I say white, but it's yellowish white maggot. It is feeding in some area, not on the animal, not on the host. So to begin with, you have an adult flea, a female flea. They are parasitic. They have to have a blood meal in order to produce fertile eggs. So that's the reason they're so persistent at finding a source of blood so that they can produce fertile eggs. The female flea, and there's several different species in Kansas, probably our most common is the cat flea. So that's the one I'll talk about, but there's dog flea, squirrel flea, raccoon. They're all different kinds of fleas based upon the host that they prefer. But the cat fleas by far and away are most common across the state. They, after the female feeds successfully on blood, and they have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So when they're kind of like a mosquito, when they pierce your skin or the skin of their host, they produce a little fluid that allows them to get some of the blood so it doesn't coagulate too quickly. That then is what causes the itching sensation, the little red sensation on our skin or your animal's skin, is that fluid that goes along with their feeding, just to keep it from coagulating. So they feed for a while, they get blood, then the female will start producing fertile eggs. Generally, they lay those eggs on the host. They lay them right on the animal. The eggs for the most part, are not sticky, so they fall off the host. As the host walks around or crawls around or flies around or whatever it does, those eggs are distributed in different places. The female can lay a lot of eggs. An adult female flea can lay 20 to 50 eggs per day, probably for a month or more. Anyway, they can lay a lot of eggs, or they can produce a lot of eggs. So these eggs are being scattered over a wide area, generally speaking. Now, if it's spring, summer, or fall, when the temperatures are, 50 at night, 80 during the day, these eggs can hatch any place. But when it's cold, those eggs don't hatch any place because they has to have warm temperatures. So they'll either lay dormant wherever they roll to, or else they will be killed. But that doesn't bother the female flea. She's still laying eggs. Now, in the wintertime, our mammals, which are the general hosts of the flea, they also have to have some place where it's relatively sheltered from the winter. So lots of times they go to a nest more regularly, or some area where they're sheltered. And so a lot of times, as they have fleas, these eggs are produced, they fall off, and they fall off in that sheltered area. Okay, so you can have, in the wintertime, you can generally have a lot more larval fleas in the nest sites of whatever the host is, rabbit, squirrel, cat, dog, whatever it is. So you can have a lot of them located in that small area, as opposed to spring, summer, fall, when they're kind of scattered out. The larval fleas don't feed on blood. The larval fleas feed on detritus or organic material wherever they are in the soil, like decaying hair or blood, or something like that. That's what they feed on until they pupate. Once they pupate, they can lay in the soil or in the nest for a considerable amount of time until another host comes along. But you have the adult on the animal, you have the larval flea in the nesting area. So that's why I say, to begin with, if you're going to successfully treat fleas, you probably need an integrated approach, or a two-pronged approach. You need to attack the site of production where the larvae are being produced, and you also need to attack the adults on the host. So that's that's where you need a veterinarian. Entomologists, pest control operators, they're more than happy to treat the site of the larval fleas, or they can actually treat the area. So if the adult jumps off for some reason, it might get into an insecticide and kill them. But they're not going to treat the animal itself. That's where you need a veterinarian to do that. And there's some really good medicines available in different forms to help control the adult flea. But the problem is, as the animal goes back to its nesting site in the winter, it's being inundated or attacked by all these pupae as the host comes back. Whatever causes the pupa to become an adult, whether it's the shadow of the host, or the exhaling of carbon dioxide, or the temperature, whatever it is, causes that pupa to open up, and the adult jumps up there and starts feeding. There's a lot more of them in that localized area in the wintertime. So if you want to collect fleas, and we do, I know we're entomologists, we do for different reasons for science, the best time to collect fleas is in the wintertime, where you go to an old pack rat nest or someplace like that, where the larval fleas are just packed in there because they have no place else to go. So the story, like I said, I've been getting calls lately about why there are so many. I don't really think it's related to the warm weather. I think maybe it's just because there are a lot of fleas right now. Maybe there are more feral cats or wild animals out and about that carry fleas, and they're getting them on dogs and the cats that are domesticated dogs and cats that are being seen by the veterinarians. But that's the reason why, generally speaking, in the winter or the cold months, we see more fleas on animals than we do the rest of the year, just because the rest of the year they're more spread out, and during the cold months they're more localized in the nest or the resting area of the animal, just because of the cold weather. Another thing, you got to be careful because fleas can carry diseases. They can transmit cat tapeworms or cat worms. They can. There are several diseases they can transmit to humans and to animals. So generally, fleas don't. They will taste test a human. They won't generally live on a human, but yes, they will bite because remember, they're hungry. They have to have a blood meal in order to have fertile eggs.
Is there a male flea that plays into this
Well,
role also?
yes, yes. There are male fleas also. It's the female, though, that produces the egg to carry on the next generation. So that's generally the one. And they're the ones that are cause more problems just because they're out there feeding to incorporate the blood into fertile eggs. And they have to do that several times because, like I said, they can produce a lot of eggs over maybe a month or 2 months period of time. And when I say that, they live based upon temperature. So if it's cool temperature, the eggs and the pupae and the larvae and all that kind of stuff will live a little bit longer than if it's really warm or really cold. That condenses the life cycles a little bit.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure, anytime.
That was K-State crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the Women Grow the Farm Conference with K-State's Robin Reid, who's on the partnership committee, and K-State's LaVell Winsor, who's the co-chair of the executive committee. Robin, LaVell, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thanks for having us.
Robin, LaVell, as you've both worked with the Women Grow the Farm Conference, it used to be known by a different name, and LaVell, what was that?
So it was known as Women Managing the Farm, and this conference was originally set up about 22 years ago with the idea for women who had maybe suddenly lost a spouse and all of a sudden they were in charge of managing their own farm. So providing those ladies resources. And then over the years, the conference has evolved. And when we approached our 20th year, we recognized that we need to be kind of looking a little different and kind of looking forward. So we went through about a year-long process of rebranding and came up with two wonderful options that we took to the partnership committee, and they chose Women Grow the Farm. So we can be forward-looking, thinking about growth in personal development and then growth on our farms as well.
And Robin, as you've been involved with this conference, what do you see the purpose of it being?
I might be a little partial, but this is always one of my favorite conferences of the year. And that's because it serves multiple purposes in my mind. Obviously, one of the number one things is getting together, hearing from the keynote speakers and all of the breakout session speakers. There is just a wide range of topics that I would say any person involved in agriculture, there is something for them at this conference. So whatever type of farmer or rancher you are, this conference is for you. A lot of the great keynote sessions are very inspiring, but there's also a lot of good technical sessions too, as far as learning new skills, learning new things in agriculture, learning about what's going on in the ag economy or agricultural policy. So there's a lot of technical, there's a lot of leadership development. There is also just a good social atmosphere at this conference, for women that are wanting to get together with those that have similar interests. I always meet new people and just have a great time in that atmosphere, learning things and meeting new people.
Do you see a lot of attendees at various stages of life?
Absolutely. So, we have attendees that are still in high school that might be coming with their mom or grandma. And then we have some that are, as LaVell said, might be owners of the farm at this point. They were likely landowners, might be crop sharing or cash renting to the farmers, but just want to be involved and know what's going on. So yeah, wide range of age and different roles in agriculture. And one thing I would also add is it's not just for production agricultural. We have a lot of women in professional roles connected to agriculture that this conference is also wonderful for them to attend.
As we saw a large rebrand from Women Managing the Farm to now being Women Grow the Farm, also saw a little bit of a change when it comes to the schedule. And LaVell, what was that change?
Yeah, so after following the conference last year, when we were very first starting to plan for this conference last spring, the partners really recommended that we look at changing the format a little bit. This conference used to begin with breakfast on Thursday and end with a keynote speaker with lunch on Friday. And what the partners overwhelmingly suggested is to start the conference at lunch with a lunch keynote speaker on Thursday and similarly with the lunch keynote on Friday. And so in the past, we would have pre-conferences on Wednesday afternoon. People would hang out, stay the night, and then start the conference on Thursday morning. But what's going to happen this year is those pre-conference sessions, those optional pre-conference sessions, will be from 9:30 to 11:30 on Thursday morning. There's 3 choices that attendees can choose from, and then the official kickoff to the conference will begin at noon on Thursday.
What are those 3 pre-conference opportunities?
Yeah, so we have some really exciting opportunities this year. So one that's more geared towards the livestock, that's going to be prepartum conditioning and calving school. And that'll be Dr. Jason Warner and Dr. AJ Tarpoff. A lot of people have been seeing that calving school over the years, and that is always just very, very highly sought after to have that information. And then the second one will be AI, not AI that we often think of in agriculture, but artificial intelligence and technologies used in crop production. And that is really going to be geared towards the crop production since we have the other pre-conference that's more geared towards people with livestock. And so we're going to be hearing about some of the new things with AI that are available in agriculture and some of the things that are coming and just some of the imagination of what that might look like in farming. And then the third one is building resilience. And Sarah Gideon's going to help us with that again. She has 2 wonderful speakers that will be helping us think through some of the brain health things, and then a practitioner that will also have some information on the practical, if there's some needs that are for mental health needs that are needed. And so all 3 of those are really going to be great pre-conference sessions.
And you've both made a note of keynote speakers, and the ones in the past that I've heard have been phenomenal. So who's joining attendees this year at Women Grow the Farm?
Yeah, we are super excited about the 3 keynotes that we have. So lunch on Thursday is going to begin with Erica Lubner, and she and her family are from New York, and they have a pumpkin patch in that area. And then she also has a special business that she works in mental health with producers as well. So that's going to be just a really interesting keynote from her actual boots on the ground in their own farm, and then also helping other producers as well. Breakfast on Friday morning will be Marilyn Vetter, who is the first woman CEO of Pheasants Forever. And that's going to be super interesting. She also owns her own farmland as well with her husband, and they offer hunting on their own farm. She manages Pheasants Forever. And of course, with Kansas, we have a lot of farms that do either lease out or are considering leasing out land for hunting. So I think it's just going to be a really interesting combination of things that she can talk about with us. And then to wrap up the conference on Friday afternoon will be Janice Person with Grounded Communications. I think a lot of people maybe are familiar with Janice's work over the years, but she used to work for a very large ag retailer and was one of their communications specialists. And about 5 years ago or so, she launched her own company, Grounded Communications, helping farmers with advocacy and then creating things that are just helpful for consumers understanding what's going on in agriculture. So that'll be a great way to wrap it up. She's very high energy and interesting to listen to.
And between those keynote speakers, what will be taking place?
So we do have 5 different times slotted for breakout sessions, and each one of those breakout times, there's 5 different opportunities of breakouts that can be chosen from. So 25 breakouts all together, and you can just really mix and match what works for you. We kind of try to have one breakout each time focus a little more on production, one that's often focused on bookkeeping or legal, one that might be like if you have your own vegetable CSA, farmers market, kind of those types of things. So there's a lot of different topics that you can mix and match to fit. You know, we have some of those that are kind of standbys that we've had in the past, like crop insurance, but then we also have some very new ones that'll be focused like on screwworm, for example. So some newer topics mixed in with some of those older topics that we've seen before as well. And then, as Robin alluded to a moment ago, this is also somewhat there is some social components to this. We always have a Thursday night activity that people can participate in, and that is going to be really fun. It's at that new Museum of Art and Light, which is right there close to the conference center. And we're really looking forward to that. We hear great things about that museum, and I think people are really going to enjoy that Thursday night.
LaVell, when is this taking place?
So this conference is Thursday and Friday, February 12th and 13th.
For people who are interested in coming to this conference, how does registration work?
If people want to go to the website, womengrowthefarm.com, there's a registration link on the website. And if they register prior to January 16th, there is an early bird registration, $175. After January 16th, it's $200 for registration. There's also a room block that's available until January 16th as well, as long as there's still rooms available in that room block at the Hilton Garden Inn.
Is there a special rate for students, whether they're in high school or college?
Yes, there is a reduced rate for the students and for students in general, so they can attend under that student rate as well. One thing I also want to point out is the pre-conferences. If you select to go to one of the pre-conferences, that is an additional $25 for that as well, to just cover our costs that we have associated with those.
Where is it taking place?
So this will be at the Hilton Garden Inn in Manhattan, same location as we've had it in the past. If rooms aren't available, there's a couple other hotels in the vicinity as well. But a lot of people do stay there at the Hilton Garden Inn because it's very convenient to be under the same roof.
Robin, LaVell, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having us, Shelby.
Thanks, Shelby.
That was K-State's LaVell Winsor, who's the co-chair of the executive committee, and K-State's Robin Reid, who's on the partnership committee, discussing the Women Grow the Farm conference taking place February 12th through the 13th in Manhattan, Kansas. I will put a link in today's show notes on agtoday.net if you'd like to learn more about this conference. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. If you'd like to get a jump on the upcoming gardening season, you should consult the Kansas Garden Guide to determine when seed should be started for each vegetable. K-State instructor and horticulture extension specialist Cynthia Domenghini covers the basics of starting vegetable seeds. Cynthia, as we think about starting seeds, something that we can actually get done this time of year, the number one thing probably is really looking for those reputable seeds.
Exactly. Starting yourself off for success begins by sourcing your seeds from a reliable company. Typically, there are places that host seed exchanges. The concern that we have about using seeds that have been saved from a previous year's garden is the possibility of cross-pollination. And so you may not be too sure what you're actually going to end up growing. But, if you're up for an experiment and an adventure in the garden, that is an option as well, using the seeds that were saved over from last year. But typically starting with a reliable company is a really great way to start your garden off.
I guess the one thing we also need to know is when we need to start, right? Because there's some timing that goes into this.
Exactly. And I always direct people to the Kansas Garden Guide. There's a chart in the back of that book, which is available free online, And that chart tells you when it's time to plant the most popular varieties of vegetables. From there, you can count back how many weeks to start the seeds so that you're ready to put them in the garden at the right time.
Generally 4 to 8 weeks for most?
Exactly. We're typically looking at 4 to 8 weeks. And there are some vegetables that need to be direct seeded into the garden, so it's important to know that information. Things like beets and carrots, they don't transplant well. So starting seeds early for those indoors is not going to be very successful. Instead, things like cabbage and cauliflower, some of those that will develop a large head, they need to get started in February in order to reach maturity by the time the summer heat starts to set in.
So again, you want to check the garden guide.
Exactly. Check in with the garden guide. You can check the planting dates and then also read up on individual vegetables and the best strategies for whether transplanting or starting seeds directly in the garden.
We also want to think about the potting mixture then?
Exactly, yes. There's plenty of pre-made mixes that are available at most garden centers, and those are going to be a good way to get started with a disease-free light mix. You don't want anything that's going to be real heavy and get waterlogged because the seeds just aren't going to be able to germinate.
What do we need to keep in mind then as we're doing the containers and the lighting and the whole process, I guess?
Yeah, the containers, you have plenty of options with containers. And you can do things that are minimal to very low cost, like recycling containers, even the little K-cups that a lot of people use for making coffee and hot chocolate with the little Keurig machines. Those can work for starting seeds. Or you can purchase plug trays. Those are nice because each cell is not real big and they already have the drainage holes. The problem with having a container that's real large is if you put too much soil in and then you're watering, sometimes the seeds can be overwatered and they won't do well with those conditions. So really a shallow container is better for starting seeds. And then once you get to the point where you've got 2 to 4 leaves that have germinated, you can transplant into something larger, like a 4-inch container. So when you're starting your seeds, you also need to keep in mind that you want to keep the soil moist, not oversaturated, but moist, and keep the seeds in an area that has some lighting, probably supplemental lighting unless you've got a really great garden window, and they need to stay warm. So keeping it in a nice, warm, well-lit environment.
That's Cynthia Domenghini, a K-State instructor and horticulture extension specialist with information on how to start vegetable seeds. Again, for more information, consult the Kansas Garden Guide. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Whitworth. This is the K-State Radio Network.